Hello friends, welcome. My name is Drew and I'm the founder here at Onward Yoga. I also have Addison's disease, or primary adrenal insufficiency as it's formally known. If you don't know what that is, check out my intro video to this series that's linked in the description below. But if you have Addison's disease or any other form of adrenal insufficiency, or you'd just like to learn more and go through this practice with us, welcome. This is going to be a restorative class where we move away from the asanas or poses that require a lot of muscular engagement and into some more deep stretching asanas that allow us to sink past our connective tissue deep into our muscles. This is a practice that's really great for helping calm our nervous system down dramatically. It's amazing for the days if you're someone who works out, exercises regularly, if you have a rest day but would still like to move your body a little bit, this is a great practice for that. Or this is also a really great practice, especially for those of us with Addison's or adrenal insufficiency, when we're having a low day, maybe not having enough energy to actually do a formal exercise of any kind, but maybe you're feeling a little tension or achiness throughout your body, maybe inflammation, things like that, and you'd like to just move a little bit without having any kind of cortisol demand on your body. This is a beautiful practice for that as well. As is the nature with all restorative classes, we bring out all the props to help us because we're going to be holding poses for several minutes at a time rather than moving through a flow. Because we're holding poses for so long, it's nice to have the props there to kind of help support our body to be able to hold the pose longer than we might normally. So for this class specifically, you're going to want to have a blanket that you can easily roll up, as well as a bolster. I've got mine right there. If you don't have a bolster, a great alternative is to get a large blanket, think like a comforter, and roll that up into kind of a cylindrical shape similar to what a bolster would be, and that works as a perfect alternative. You may also want to have a no, let me start that part over. As is the nature with all restorative classes, we're going to bring out all the props for this one. Let me say that again. As is the nature with all restorative classes, I like to bring out as many props as possible. And this is because we're going to be holding poses for often several minutes at a time rather than flowing from pose to pose. The props are there to help us hold the poses for longer than we normally would be able to. So they're not here if you're someone who's really competitive and likes to think that you can do everything without a prop. This isn't the case. We're not here to compete against anyone. Nope, I don't need to say any of this shit. As is the case with all restorative classes, we're going to be bringing out all the props for this one. It's because we're going to be holding poses for several minutes at a time rather than flowing from pose to pose. And the props are there to help us hold poses for longer than we might normally be able to. So for this class specifically, you're going to want to have a bolster, and I've got mine right there if you're not sure what that is. If you don't have a bolster, don't worry. Grab a large blanket, think like a comforter, for example, and just roll it up into a cylindrical shape similar to that. You're also going to want another blanket that's smaller, that's easy to roll up. Just have that off to the side of your mat. And then if you have 2 blocks, go ahead and grab those as well. You may not need them for practice, but if you do have them, just have them nearby just in case. Whenever you're ready, I'll see you back here on the mat. All right, so start to make your way down onto your mat into a table position. So bringing your hands down, you're going to stack your shoulders right above your wrists, your hips above your knees. If you'd like to stretch out the arches of your feet, you can just kind of tuck your toes under and just kind of pedal your feet a couple times. And then we're going to begin to move through cat and cow. This is just to really help us warm up our spine, start to create some space in our torso. And we're going to take cat and cow at the pace of your breath. So on an inhale, your belly drops towards the mat, tailbone, head, and chest lift. Then on an exhale, curl in, tuck your chin to your chest, tailbone tucks under, center of your back presses up towards the ceiling. And then the inhale brings you right back up for cow. Exhale, we curl in for cat. Just kind of keep moving like this, taking it at your pace. You might keep your eyes closed while we're here, trying to start to bring your attention inward to your body. And while we're here, if you'd like to find any other movement that's going to help you create space in your torso, start to warm up, loosen up your spine, things like side stretches, kind of pushing one hip over and then the other, or barrel rolls, which are just big circles with your hips. These are great options. If you are taking barrel rolls, make sure you go both directions with your circles. We're here for about 3 more slow, deep breaths. Just finding any movement that will feel really good in your body. All right, moving to a neutral spine. Start to bring your knees out as wide as feels comfortable. Let your big toes come together slightly to touch back behind you, and then sink your hips low for child's pose. Stretch your hands down the mat in front of you, letting your forehead come down to rest on the mat. This is a pose where if coming all the way down to the mat is a little hard for you, you could use a bolster and just kind of lay it right underneath your torso, or you could place a block right under your head just for a little extra support. In your child's pose, think about closing your eyes. If you're holding tension in the back of your neck, you might rock your head from side to side a couple times. With each inhale, try to create length down your back. And with each exhale, try to sink down into that length. We're going to be here for another about 1.5 to 2 minutes. If you'd like to get a shoulder opening, you can bring your hands together in kind of a prayer-like position, bend your elbows and let your thumbs come to rest at the nape of your neck. You may need to walk your elbows in a little bit closer to your head or down the mat in front of you. Alternatively, if you're not feeling much of a stretch here, this is where having 2 blocks, you could place 1 block under each elbow to kind of deepen the stretch if you'd like. Start to slow down the pace of your breath. We do this by constricting our throat slightly, which makes our breath a little more audible. It's creating what's called the ujjayi breath, or the oceanic breath. This is helping you get more oxygen into your body with each breath. And it's helping to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. For those of us with Addison's disease or adrenal insufficiency, stimulating our parasympathetic nervous system, particularly in a restorative class, is our top priority. Why? Because when our sympathetic nervous system is activated, then our body has a higher cortisol demand. But when the parasympathetic nervous system is stimulated, cortisol is suppressed, or the demand for cortisol is suppressed in our body. It allows us to get into a state where our body can start to rest, digest, and restore. Let's go ahead and take about 3 more slow, deep breaths here. And after your next exhale, slowly lower your hands to the mat if they're lifted. Inhale, pull your hands back towards your shoulders and press yourself up to a table. In table, stack your shoulders above your wrists, hips above your knees. Start to take a couple more rounds of cat and cow. Just helping a little blood return back into our extremities. And then you're going to make your way down into a seat. This is where we're moving into a seated forward fold. If you have really tight hamstrings and folding forward like this is really intense, grab something, be it a blanket or a block or even your bolster, and sit on it. So bring it right underneath your tailbone so you're elevating your hips. This is going to make it a little bit easier to bow forward over your legs. The one thing you just have to be mindful about is not locking out your knees, because your knees are going to be lifted off the mat. You want to make sure that you keep just a slight engagement of your knees to avoid locking out. Yeah? All right, so find a version that works best for you from a comfortable seat. Bring your legs straight out in front of you. Feet come together. Even weight in both sits bones. Sit up nice and tall. On an inhale, reach your arms up overhead. Exhale, now hinge from your hips forward. Rather than curling your spine to come down, think about just hinging here. Come as far forward as you can, grabbing either behind your calves or all the way to your feet. And you can kind of pull yourself down. Bend your knees as much as you need to avoid curling your spine. And just breathe slowly. We're not going to be here for too long. Keep breathing slow and steady. Keep your feet flexed. Think about kind of lifting your chest through your arms just to help keep your spine nice and elongated. Got about 5 more slow, deep breaths here. Try to continue on with that ujjayi breath, helping keep our parasympathetic nervous system stimulated, even as we move into some of these deeper stretches. We're about to move into some really deep hip openers here in a moment, where it's going to be really important for you to focus on controlling your breath as you sink down into them. For most of the history of modern medicine, scientists believed that we had no control over our autonomic nervous system. And then yoga came to the West, and scientists started studying yoga to understand its physiologic effects on the body. And suddenly, we learned that through our breath control, the pranayama, we actually do have some degree of control over our autonomic nervous system. If you're not sure what the autonomic nervous system is, it is the part of our nervous system that contains both parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves. All right, on your next inhale, engage your core, reach your arms up overhead. And exhale, cactus your arms, really squeeze your shoulder blades as your elbows come down. All right, we're going to move into pigeon pose from here. So for pigeon, this is where you may want your bolster. Go ahead and bring it right off to the side of your mat. From here, you can enter pigeon from kind of 2 different ways. You can do it from table, which is a little more difficult in my opinion. We're going to start on the left side, so bringing our left knee down to the mat outside of our left wrist. If moving into this pose from table is too difficult, try coming at it from a downward dog, where instead you would lift your left leg, and on an exhale, gently step your left knee through, bringing it down to the mat outside your left wrist. Yeah. Then we untuck our back toes. This is where, if you'd like to use a bolster, you can grab one, place it right underneath your torso. Let your head come all the way down to rest. Be bringing it just off to one side. This can be a really intense hip opener. If you can't make it quite all the way down onto your bolster, always feel free to sit up on your hands like this. You may just need to kind of have a little bit of glute engagement here to help protect your lower back if you're keeping your chest lifted. So for anyone with Addison's disease, and you're going to hear me talk a lot about the nervous system, and this for good reason. I think it's super critical that we have an understanding of how our nervous system works, because our bodies no longer produce stress hormones, right? And so stress is inevitable, especially in the 21st century. If we can understand what's happening with our nervous system when we encounter stress and how we can help mitigate that stress by regulating our nervous system, then our daily life with Addison's becomes so much more manageable. But all it takes is awareness. We have to be aware of what's happening in our body 24/7. And I think practices like yoga, pranayama, meditation help us learn how to be in tune with our body, to recognize when we're feeling emotional stress that we might have otherwise just kind of brushed off, that maybe we need to learn how to mitigate now with this disease so that we don't get to a point where we have to continually updose on a regular basis. When we're in big hip openers like pigeon pose, and we're going to be here for about another minute. If you need to make some adjustments, you can always come up, kind of pressing your hands up and then sink back down, or you can kind of pulse up and down. So on an inhale, you'd lift your chest, exhale, you'd lower down. And you can just kind of keep moving like that if you need to. Otherwise, continue to sink down into it. But what I was saying is when we're in deep hip openers like pigeon, oftentimes these poses can elicit some really heavy emotions for us. The reason for that is because our sympathetic nervous system, the part of the autonomic nervous system that's responsible for responding to stress, it's the part of our nervous system that creates the need for cortisol in our body, right? It's what gives us energy, spurs us into action, is responsible for the fight or flight response that we have. The sympathetic nervous system has nerves that go down either side of our spinal column, from the top of our head all the way down to our tailbone. When we first experience stress, the back of our neck is going to tense up first. If we don't address it, then it quickly moves into tension in our shoulders. This is because the nerves there are firing. If we don't address it when the tension's in our shoulders, then it beelines all the way down our back into our hips. And this is where I kind of think of it like long-term storage for stress. And we kind of tend to forget about it once it makes it to our hips, unless we start having hip trouble. But at any rate, we become very aware of all of the things that have gone into long-term storage when we move into a deep hip opener like this. So if you're feeling some heavy emotions, keep breathing slow and steady. Try to just allow those emotions to come up and out rather than fighting and suppressing them back down, which is just going to basically create conflict in your body. Allow the emotion to come up, breathe through it. If you need to cry or laugh, whatever emotion you might be feeling, let it out so that it can be free from your body. All right, go ahead and take one more slow, deep breath here. And then when you're ready, press your hands into the mat, lift your torso up, very gently roll onto your left hip and swing your right leg around. And straighten both legs out in front of you. You might Give your legs a little bit of a shake, helping to bring some blood flow back into your left leg. From here, we're headed into frog pose. This is again where you're going to want your bolster and bring it off to the side of your mat. And you may want your blanket here as well for underneath your knees. So for frog pose, if you're using a blanket for your knees, you might need to make it a little bit longer into kind of like a long rectangle like this, so that when you bring your knees out wide, they're supported. All right, so for frog pose, we come back to a table position. Start to bring your knees out as wide as feels comfortable in your body. Then you're gonna push your feet out so that your ankles are right below your knees. Yeah, so you have kind of like frog legs here. Then you can grab your bolster, bring it right underneath your torso, and just start to lay down onto your bolster. To decrease the intensity of this stretch, bring your torso forward. So just kind of lean forward. To increase the intensity, push your hips backwards. And that will very quickly intensify the stretch for you. Again, we're in a really deep hip opener. So if you're feeling those heavy emotions starting to come up, just let your eyes close, steady your breath, continue to take slow and controlled and full breaths while you're here, allowing those emotions to move up and out. You're here for about another minute. Feel free to make any adjustments as always. Listen to your body. While you should be feeling a deep stretch that can be quite intense, you shouldn't really feel pain. If you are feeling pain, try coming out of the pose to a point where you no longer feel that pain. Take about 3 more slow, deep breaths here. All right. Start to bring your hands back underneath your shoulders. Very slowly and gently press your torso up off your bolster. You can move your bolster off to the side of your mat. Now, to come out of this pose, start to bring your ankles back towards one another, bringing your feet together. Then press your hands down, kind of lift your chest up, bring your knees together right underneath your torso so you're in table. And then we're headed back into pigeon pose, but on the right side. So, for pigeon, have your bolster ready. Remember, you can enter into pigeon from table just by bringing your knee forward to the mat outside of your right wrist, or you can enter from downward dog, lifting your right leg on an inhale. Exhale, gently stepping your right knee through, bringing it down to the mat outside your right wrist. Then untuck your back toes. Grab your bolster if you used it on the other side, bringing it right underneath your torso. And when you're ready, you can sink all the way down to the mat. You might alternate which cheek you have laying on your bolster this time. So if you had your left cheek laying on it last time, maybe turn your head now so that your right cheek lays on your bolster. This way You avoid creating any imbalances in your neck. Continue to steady your breath. We're going to be here for about another minute. Remember, just like before, if this is starting to get really intense, you can always press yourself back up onto your hands and just kind of hold pigeon from here. Or you can kind of pulse up and down. So on an inhale, lifting your head and chest. Exhale, coming right back down. Inhale, lifting up. And exhale, lowering. That kind of pulsing movement up and down. This triggers these little organelles that's in your muscles. They're called the Golgi tendon organs. And when these little organelles are stimulated, they signal to our nervous system that it's okay to relax the muscles in that particular area down, allowing those muscles to open up a little more easily and without quite as much strain. Got about 3 more slow, deep breaths on this side. All right. Whenever you're ready, start to bring your hands back underneath your shoulders to press your torso up. Very gently roll onto your right hip and swing your left leg around. Again, we're headed back into frog pose, so bring your bolster off to the side of your mat. Grab your blanket if you used it before. Start to bring it out wide so that you can support your knees. From a tabletop position, you're going to step your knees out as wide as feels comfortable in your body. Then start to kick your feet out so that your heels are right underneath your knees. Grab your bolster, pull it in, and start to lay all the way down. Remember, you can decrease the intensity of this stretch by leaning forward further, or you can increase the intensity by pressing your hips backwards further. Promise, well, this is our last deep hip opener for this class. Just here for about another minute or so. Try to let your hips sink down as low as you can without creating any pain in your body. Just looking for a really deep stretch. Got about 30 more seconds to go. See if you can't maybe slow down the pace of your breath even just a little bit more. Letting your torso sink down into your bolster or towards the mat a little further. Try to relax your shoulders, your neck. 3 more slow, deep breaths here. All right, friends. Start to bring your hands back under your shoulders. Gently press your torso up off your bolster. Move your bolster off to the side of your mat. Now, to come out of this pose, bring your ankles together first, leaning forward. Then press your hips up and bring your knees back together so you end up in a tabletop position. You might just take a couple rounds of cat and cow while you're in your table. I'm just turning around to face the top of my mat. Couple rounds of cat and cow. This is going to help bring a little blood flow back into your hips and into your legs. All right. Then you're going to make your way down onto your back. Now, this is where you're going to want to have your blanket folded up. So you want to make kind of a large rectangle with your blanket like this. And then you're going to roll that blanket into a tight roll so that you have something that looks kind of like this. Yeah? This is going to eventually be supporting your spine, so it should be long enough to support your whole torso. All right, start to make your way down onto your back whenever you're ready. And once you're on your back, take a moment, hug your knees into your chest. Gently press your tailbone down towards the mat. Slightly lift your chest to find some space in your abdomen. And maybe you start to rock from side to side a couple times. All right, on your next inhale, go ahead and take a full body stretch, reaching your arms up overhead, straightening your legs. While we're here, you may take some wrist circles and some ankle circles. And then whenever you're ready, start to bring your hands down by your sides, rebend your knees, and start to walk your feet out to the edge of your mat, kind of pressing your heels out and then letting your knees fall in towards one another for a fallen bridge. You can bring one hand to your belly, one hand to your chest, maybe letting your eyes close. You're going to try to create a wave of breath in your body, where with each inhale, your belly rises first, your breath expands up into your chest. Exhale, your belly falls, and your breath recedes back down towards your navel center. Just continue on like this, slow, steady breaths, bringing waves of fresh oxygen into your body. And then if you'd like, keeping your feet planted where they are, you could just gently start to windshield wiper your knees from side to side. All right. Whenever you're ready, let both of your knees start to fall over to the left. You can stay right here. If you need, you can grab a block and place it right underneath your left thigh for a little extra support. Or if you'd like to go a little deeper, you can bring your left ankle to the top of your right knee and let both knees fall down towards the mat. Again, remember you can always place your block right underneath your left thigh just for a little extra support here. Perhaps with your arms, you can always keep them one hand on your belly, one hand on your chest, or you can reach your arms straight up overhead. We're going to be here for about 45 seconds. Try to slow the pace of your breath down a little bit more if you can. With each inhale, imagine creating space throughout your body. With each exhale, try to sink down into that space. All right. If you have your left ankle on top of your right knee, gently bring it back down to the floor. On an inhale, start to bring your knees back up to center. And then on your exhale, hug both knees into your chest. Gently rock from side to side, help reset your spine. And then when you're ready, you can lower your feet back down to the mat, bringing them out wide once again, letting your heels kind of press outwards. And then you might let your knees drop over to the right this time. Again, using your block if you need it to support your right thigh. Or if you'd like to go a little deeper, bring your right ankle to the top of your left knee. Let both knees drop down towards the mat. Or again, support your right thigh with the block right underneath it. You can then reach your arms straight up overhead or keep one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest. If you've noticed throughout class that one side of your body is more tight than the other, that's totally normal. Most people have imbalances in their body. I do too. And so if one side's feeling a lot more tight than the other, well, that's why we do work like this, so that we can even out and create a little more balanced space in our bodies. Again, we're here for about 45 more seconds. Keep your breath slow and controlled. Go ahead and take 3 more slow, deep breaths. All right, friends. So when you're ready, start to bring your right ankle off your left, if you had it there. Gently return your knees back up to center. On an exhale, hug both knees into your chest. Gently rock from side to side. And then we're headed to the wall for what's called legs up the wall. The easiest way to get into this pose is to bring one hip to your wall and then just simply kind of pivot as your back comes down, pivot your legs up the wall and let both feet come together roughly hips width distance apart. You may need to kind of scoot your hips in a little bit closer. You can again have one hand on your belly, one hand on your chest to continue on with that wave of breath. Or if you feel like you've got that breath pattern down, maybe bring your arms up to a cactus shape. Hoping to get a little bit of a chest expansion while we're here. Legs up the wall is an incredible pose, and I think it's highly undervalued. What it's doing, this is great if you are someone who suffers from restless leg syndrome. Legs up the wall for like 10 to 15 minutes can be a really powerful way to help alleviate that symptom. This is also a great pose for helping to stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system. What it's doing is it's allowing blood to return back down to the core of our body. And the process of doing that stimulates parasympathetic activity within our body, allowing us to get into a more relaxed and restorative state, both physically and mentally. So this is a great pose equally if you've been out, hiking all day or biking or doing any kind of strenuous activity where you've been on your feet all day. This is a great pose to kind of just help alleviate tension and fatigue or achiness in your legs. And you always have options. Kind of the standard way to do this is to just keep your feet hips width distance apart. But you can always bring your feet out really wide on the wall. Or you could play with kind of the Baddha Konasana or butterfly shape, bringing the soles of your feet together and pressing your knees out wide. If you take this variation though, you may want to kind of gently use your hands to help press your knees out away from one another, because with our legs up the wall, our knees don't have gravity to help them fall apart from each other. So we kind of need that pressure from our hands to help. And feel free, we're going to be here for probably another 2 minutes. Find a variation or feel free to move through the different variations as you please. One other option that you might consider is you can always place a bolster right underneath your tailbone. This is going to further encourage more blood flow back towards your heart. That said, it can be really beneficial for some people, but if you're someone with lower back issues, specifically if you have any kind of herniated or bulging disc in your spine, you may not want to take that variation as it could aggravate that injury. Continue on with some slow, deep breaths. Again, letting each inhale originate down by your belly, expand up into your chest. Exhale, your belly falls and your breath recedes back down to your navel center. Try to relax your jaw as much as possible, especially if you're someone who's prone to TMJ or to clenching your teeth or just kind of general tension in your jaw. If you need a little assistance relaxing your jaw down, you might just kind of shake your lower jaw from side to side a couple times and then let your jaw hang heavy, gently pressing the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth just behind your front teeth. Couple more slow, deep breaths here. All right. If you're ready to come out of this pose, start to bend your knees. You're just going to roll over to one side and then start to press yourself back up We're headed into Supta Baddha Konasana, or supine butterfly pose, but we're going to take it with a supported version. So this is where our rolled up blanket's going to come into play. So go ahead and grab it, bring it down to your mat, kind of on the vertical edge, so that when you lay back, the blanket is going to be supporting your spine. The way to align this is to just bring the edge of the blanket right up to your tailbone and then slowly lean back onto the blanket. Just make sure that your head is fully supported on the blanket. If it's off, kind of moving off the top edge, grab a block or another pillow to support your head. That way you don't get too much of a arch in the back of your neck. Then you're going to bring the soles of your feet together. Let your knees fall out wide. Again, this is where you could use blocks, just kind of placing them right underneath your thighs for a little support if this is really intense on your hips or the adductor muscles, the insides of your thighs. In Supta Baddha Konasana, you've got options again with your hands. One hand could be on your belly, one hand on your chest. Or to get more of a chest expansion, again, bring your arms out to a cactus shape. And kind of the higher up your elbows go, the more chest expansion you're going to get. But we want to be able to completely relax our shoulders. So if you bring your elbows up so high that you start to notice you're having to flex your shoulders to hold your arms in that position, bring your elbows down just a little bit lower so that you can completely relax everything in your body. Keep breathing slow and steady, creating that wave of breath. Continuing to use your ujjayi breathing. We've got a slight constriction of your throat that makes your breath a little more audible. If holding your arms in this cactus shape for so long starts to get painful on your shoulders or anywhere else, you can start to bring your hands down by your sides, just kind of flipping your palms face up, just helping to decrease that stretch in your shoulders. But if it's no problem for you, just kind of keep that cactus shape in your arms. I meant to mention this at the beginning of class, but if you have noticed throughout this practice that it's difficult to keep yourself still in these long holds in the poses, know that you're not alone. Restorative classes are often some of the most difficult classes for people, not because the physical part of class is hard, but because keeping our minds quiet to allow our bodies to get into the relaxed state can be incredibly challenging. But that also indicates the importance of this practice. It's in this really intense world we live in, where our attention is pulled in so many directions on a daily basis and throughout the day. Restorative classes like this, where we are encouraged to slow way down, to get quiet in our bodies, it's just priceless. This is what we need to help regulate our nervous system. So just know if your mind is racing or wandering, or you're noticing you're having a hard time holding still, know that's normal. Try to use your breath to continue to help slow down the pace of your body, the pace of your breath, pace of your mind. And know that with practice, the more restorative classes you practice, the easier it gets to get slow, to get quiet. And if you're someone with Addison's or adrenal insufficiency, learning how to be still and quiet is going to be an incredible tool for helping manage this disease, particularly on the days when we're feeling a lot of emotional stress, or like we're being pulled in a lot of different directions, those are the times when taking 5, 10, 15, even 20 minutes to remove ourselves from whatever situation has us stressed and just slow down and get quiet can help dramatically improve your experience with this disease. Like I said before, this restorative class allows us to cool down the sympathetic nervous system and stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system so that our stress doesn't have to dominate our life. We're not a slave to our stress. We can control how we respond to it. All right, go ahead and take one more slow, deep breath here. And bring your hands down by your sides. Help guide your knees back together like you were closing a book. And you're going to just gently roll off your blanket to one side. Move your blanket out from underneath you. And then just roll onto your back. On an inhale, take a full body stretch once again. And let your hands come down by your sides. We're moving into Shavasana, or corpse pose. This is where we get to soak up all the benefits of class. Let your body start to sink down into your mat. Continue on with your wave-like pattern of breathing. If you notice your mind starting to wander, instead of judging yourself for having the thoughts, see if you can't just become aware that you are having thoughts. By becoming aware that you're having a thought, you've now become an observer. And this is really the heart of meditation, the practice of becoming an observer of ourselves, of separating ourself from our thoughts. And then if you've moved into that observer state, you have the choice to either continue to let the thoughts float through your mind, or perhaps to redirect your attention to your breath and use your breath almost as a mantra for helping to quiet down a racing mind. All right, I'm going to be quiet now for a couple more minutes, letting you sink down into your Shavasana. If you'd like to go for a longer Shavasana, pause your video now. Otherwise, stick with me and I'll call you out shortly. Friend, gently start to deepen your breath. Maybe finding a little movement in your fingers and toes. If you'd like to take another full body stretch, feel free to do so. Or perhaps roll over to one side, kind of curling up into a fetal position just for a breath or two before making your way up to a comfortable seat. Once you're seated, just take a moment, bow forward, seal your practice in. Remember, you're not bowing to me or anything external, but really to yourself and the work you did here on the mat. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope to see you in class again soon. And if you enjoyed this class, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. It's really the best way to help us grow this series if you found this beneficial. And if you'd like more like this, come check out Onward Every Day. This is a premium membership where you would have access to all of our recorded videos 24/7, as well as free access to all of our live online classes. All right. Thanks so much again for joining. I'll catch you next time.